Morning, gentlemen. Active Aussie MGTOW here on this very miserable Tuesday morning here in Brisbane, Australia. It was scorching hot yesterday morning and looked like storms were coming through yesterday afternoon, but it's just raining now. But it's a very gloomy sort of morning. I just want to talk about that certain day that's coming up this Friday, March 8. And I think all you guys know what I'm talking about. And back in March 2019, I made a video in regard to this. And you could say I sort of suggested that this day that is, you could say, celebrated every March or so, I suggested that it was a type of scam similar to that other day on February 14th. And 6 months after I made that video, in March 2019, that video was taken down by YouTube because apparently they said it violates their hate speech policy or words to that effect. And I don't think I said anything hateful at all in that video. I just suggested that this day, Women's Day, is just another very gynocentric sort of day that is just another excuse for men or for women to try and get men to buy them gifts and to do things for them. I don't see what's wrong with saying that. I feel the same way in regard to Valentine's Day. I think it's just a big rip-off and a scam as well. And when I was living over in Asia, I actually had women who would contact me, send me text messages and voice messages, especially Chinese women, and they would say, "Today is Women's Day, what are you going to get me, or what are you going to do for me?" And these were just like work colleagues and even sometimes women I didn't even know that well, and they want me to give them something, buy them a gift, do something for them. And this used to be extremely irritating, it's extremely rude, that's pretty obvious, but I used to say to them, well, maybe I can give you the steam off my pea water. And they used to get very angry when I'd send them messages like that. But it just shows you again the level of entitlement. And this was quite a few years ago, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago. I think the last time that happened was 8 years ago. So around about, March 2016. But the problem is today in this society that a lot of women just expect to be worshipped. And I think if you are a person who is religious, you can worship God, but God is the only thing you could say that should be worshipped. Women should not be worshipped, people should not be worshipped. You can have respect for certain individuals, but you should never worship another human being. And we've seen throughout history what can happen when a human being is worshipped and put up on a pedestal and just idolized. So it's the worshipping of false idols. And I just want to briefly touch on something else. And some of you guys listening, viewing, would be familiar with that shocking murder that occurred here in Brisbane a few weeks back at Redbank Plains, which is just west of Brisbane. I've worked out there before around that area at Redbank Plains, Goodna, and I always felt that it was a fairly safe area, but there was that shocking murder. That woman, Violene White, was stabbed to death at the Redbank Plaza shopping centre, allegedly by an African youth. I've got to be careful because this is going to be within the courts, but so I'll say allegedly. And I think that's a terrible crime. And that woman was totally innocent. She'd just been shopping at 6 p.m. on a Saturday night, and she walked back to her car and she was stabbed to death. And allegedly the motive was to steal her Hyundai car. And I'm not trying to blame this woman in any way. She was totally innocent, 70 years old, and her granddaughter witnessed her get stabbed to death. It's just an appalling crime. But I was thinking, if that had been a man, I'm just wondering, would it have received the same sort of media coverage? I'm not sure. And there is a precedent for this back in 2018 in regard to the Eurydice Dixon murder in Melbourne. And she had been walking through a park in Melbourne at 2 a.m. in the morning, and she got murdered. And that was in the news for weeks and months, and even the Prime Minister and the opposition leader turned up to her funeral. And I made a video in regard to that, and I got a lot of hate speech for that video, so I had to take it down. But basically I was saying that she was foolish to walk through a park in Melbourne early in the morning, and as she was a long-time resident of Melbourne, she should have known better. That's not to say she deserved it, but that people have to take some sort of accountability for their actions. And about 18 months after I made that video, I took it down because I was just getting a lot of hate comments and people calling me all sort of things. But one of the reasons why I made that video is because a few weeks after her murder, there was another murder of a man in a park in Melbourne several kilometres away, and that only got about 90 seconds on local news bulletins. So because it's a woman, I think a few thousand people attended her funeral, including political leaders and local politicians. So I can just see a bit of hypocrisy in regard to this. It just seems that when a woman dies, if she gets murdered or she's killed in an accident, it always gets more media coverage, more news coverage, and I don't see what's wrong with pointing this out. That's about all I've really got to say this morning. But it makes you become quite cynical in regard to our Western society nowadays. And I know this is happening in the USA, the UK, Canada, Australia, France, Germany, a lot of Western countries. So it's not just here in Australia. But anyway, guys, that's all for now, and hopefully I can talk to you again soon.